This is the examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Bruschi.
We are talking with criminal defense attorney Arie Shamuilian. Thank you so much for taking the time. We're discussing the case of Lori Vallow Daybell as we await a verdict in this case. Arie, as a criminal defense attorney, I have to ask, were you surprised that the defense rested right away without making any arguments or calling any witnesses?
Absolutely. What's interesting in this case is the defense is mainly relying on a failure of elements defense here. Mm-hmm. What that means is that the defense is banking that the jury doesn't believe the state has proved beyond a reasonable doubt all of the elements of both crimes, which are first-degree murder and conspiracy. It's very interesting that they just submitted. I would have thought as a defense attorney they would at least mention issues with Chad Daybell with witnesses that would support their defense of him being the main perpetrator here.
Mm-hmm. It was very bizarre. I mean, is this, do you think they truly feel like the prosecution did not lay out the case, or did they just realize that there's really not anybody that will go to the stand to defend Lori Vallow Daybell anymore?
It could be one of two things. And the first thing that I think is the big issue is maybe Lori didn't want to throw Chad under the bus. Mm-hmm. Maybe Lori is loyal to Chad even throughout this process. And only when they came to closing, defense told Lori, like, hey, if we don't mention this in closing, you're going to go away for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know if you saw, but in closing, they did mention Chad is the one responsible for all this.
Yeah.
And the second possibility is throughout the trial, the defense found potential issues with the elements of the case where Lori can't be found guilty because the state hasn't proved each element beyond a reasonable doubt. But there is bad circumstantial evidence. I hope you would agree with me. There's a lot of bad facts here against Lori.
Oh, well, without a doubt, what stands out to you as being bad facts against Lori?
When someone has two kids missing and the government's looking for these kids and you fail to cooperate with it, that doesn't look good for the parents, right?
Not at all.
Not to mention they catch them poolside in Hawaii, chilling next to the pool, and they get served court documents to produce their children. And their response is just, do you need anything from me?
Yeah.
Rather than, being concerned. And all those things are going to play out negatively while the jury is deliberating for Lori.
I can't imagine a way at this point where she would not be found guilty on these charges unless there's a juror that just is a complete idiot.
or jury nullification, right? A juror could believe that Chad brainwashed Lori to do all this and none of this was voluntarily done. I think that's going to be a far stretch, right? Mm-hmm. I think she's going to ultimately go down for conspiracy in the first-degree murder, but it is within the realm of possibility where a juror, holds out on this thing.
I was really impressed with the closing arguments made by the state. I think they really did a good job of bringing everybody back into the circle, having them understand, reminding them about so many elements of this case, because there are just so many. When I heard the closing arguments, I was like, oh, I almost forgot about that little piece there. And it really does. I mean, it connects her to everything. She is the factor that is there in every single murder. And there does seem to be circumstantial evidence there beyond circumstantial evidence. There's a lot of evidence in this case that shows she's at least aware of what is going on and complicit with the actions of Chad and very likely Alex Cox as well. Do you think she had any hand in the actual murder of the children other than commanding essentially her minions to do so?
Commanding someone in a conspiracy to commit a crime, you're essentially equal with the principal.
Yep.
So whether she aided, abetted, encouraged the commission of this crime, ultimately she's culpable for the target crime, which here is the first-degree murder. So that's my belief. Even if she said, hey, I think these kids are the devil, I want you to take them out, she's done her part there, and she should be found guilty for first degree.
Well, it was interesting with a lot of the text messages. They would go on the Chad death scale of what percentage is still the child, I believe. Is that how the death scale works? There's like at a 2% or a 3% or something. And it was creepy how Lori continued to ask about JJ and when is he going to be at 0? When is he at 0? Because 0, I guess, to them means, well, that's when it's okay to kill them because they're completely zombies at that point. She almost seemed excited about it, but then also intermingled in those texts promises of sex, basically, of, oh, there will be intimate, like in the same line sometimes of talking about killing the children. I don't even know what that is when someone is capable of doing such a thing like that.
Yeah, well, the state's going to argue that goes to show their evilness, right? First-degree murder deals with deliberation, willfulness, and premeditation. The fact that they're counting down on the scale down to 0 is going to show the premeditation. They're planning this thing out. Ultimately, when we reach 0, then we're going to move forward on the killing. So those text messages definitely don't help Lori in this case, and that would be direct evidence of her involvement potentially in these killings.
You're listening to the Hidden Killers podcast.
This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Bruschi.
Defense attorney Arie Shamuilian, thank you so much for your insight into this. I want to talk to you once we have a verdict as well and get some thoughts on what's going to happen next. There's going to be a Daybell trial for Chad. There's going to be a sentencing for Lori, and I wonder if there'll be any other charges brought against any other individuals that may be called co-conspirators in these murders. Press subscribe wherever you download podcasts. You don't miss any of that as we continue to cover this trial for you day by day. I'm Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.